to our last day at the Canon Creative Studio at Sundance 2026. Woo! Thank you so much for coming. My name is Cindy Bear, and I am the event specialist for Canon Burbank. So for those of you who are in the Los Angeles area, we just wanted to let you know that Canon Burbank is available to you. Yes, we are a filmmaker hub for photographers and creators, and we offer all kinds of great events like the ones we've had here this week and later today. So besides panels and workshops and presentations, we also do screenings of projects that were shot on Canon, or you can come and schedule an in-person demo if you want to look at any of our gear. So, oh yes, also, if you have an idea for an event, I'm the person to talk to. Come and pitch it to me. I'll be in the back over there. And if you want to get notified about the events that we're having, there's a QR code that you can scan, and you can come join us. So with that, without further ado, I will turn this over to our brilliant moderator, Jay Holben from American Cinematographer Magazine. Enjoy.
Thank you. I will both take the brilliant label and the applause all day long. Bring it on. As Cindy said, my name is Jay Holben. I am an associate member of the American Society of Cinematographers, and I am the contributing editor for American Cinematographer Magazine. I am also myself a recovering cinematographer. Matt, I did that for you. But I went to the dark side and became a director-producer. But that's okay. I still stay involved in cinematography. And germane to this discussion today, I'm also the co-author of a book called the Cine Lens Manual. So, ooh, if you don't have it, you guys can go ahead and buy it right now. CineLensManual.com. I'll wait. And nobody's taking me up on it. Okay, great, cool. We're going to do a discussion here about lenses with these four amazing individuals. Mr. Brian, who shot a film called When a Witness Recants. Mr. Alex, who shot a film called The Lake. And Gabby and Jack, who shot a film called Nuisance Bear. Welcome to all four of you. So you chose here, man, which means I'm going to put you on the spot right away.
I'm in the eye of fear today, Jay.
That's right. Tell us about When a Witness Recants.
When a Witness Recants is a film about the Harlem Park Three, who were unjustly accused of murder and lost their freedom for 36 years. Based on the recanting of that testimony, they were awarded their freedom in 2023. And it examines the case as well as where their lives are now.
And how did you get involved in that project?
I was reached out to by director Dawn Porter, who happens to be here today. Who's become like a trusted collaborator. We've been working together now for about 3 years. And she shared her vision with me. And we got on the road, started shooting.
Alex, how about The Lake?
Hey, everyone. My name is Alex. I shot The Lake. It's about the Great Salt Lake and the fact that it's drying up. Over half the water is diverted for human use, and that creates a dry lake bed, which kicks up toxic dust. And the director Abby Ellis and I followed 3 individuals, 2 scientists who are also advocates of the lake, and the Great Salt Lake Commissioner over about 2.5 years to see their work in trying to educate the public and bring together different parts of the community to figure out how to save it.
Fantastic. Gabby, you want to tell us a bit about Nuisance Bear?
Yes, Jack and I are both the directors and cinematographers of Nuisance Bear, because we're controlling. And do you want to say what it's about? No. Okay. It's about a polar bear as it navigates human infrastructure, both with ecotourism, wildlife conservation, and traditional hunters. And it's a portrait of humanity through the eyes of a bear.
Yeah, it follows this bear through this, on this odyssey. And for us, it was really important to try to capture the bear's perspective as much as possible. So having a moving camera and having it low to the ground.
What got you guys started in covering a polar bear?
We kind of stumbled into it, to be honest. Churchill, Manitoba, where the film takes place, or one of the communities where the film takes place, is a really famous destination for polar bears. And so, as Canadians, I think we just had an awareness of these bears and this place, and so we were interested in going there, not really knowing what to find. And we went there 10 years ago for the first time, and our impression was what we'd seen on planet Earth, bears in the pristine wilderness. And we were just shocked by the circus of tourism and all the complex social dynamics around the bears.
And Alex, how did you get involved with the lake?
I met Abby maybe 4 or 5 years ago on set. We became good friends, and yeah, she's a local. She lives here in Park City, so she would fly me out maybe every 3 months or so, or when things were kind of happening. And if I couldn't make it, she would shoot as well. So we kind of tag teamed, and that's how it unfolded.
I'm imagining all of you use some Canon gear, right? I mean, just as a weird coincidence. Brian, tell me what your choice was, what you used, and why.
On this film, we used the Sumire lenses. On our last film, Luther, Never Too Much, we had a great experience with them, and after putting them through their paces, I began to trust that they could, work really well in a verite space, especially the way I like to work. I like to work in a verite space with primes. So them being lightweight and just having incredible rendition, the ability to, my favorite so far has been the 35. So the ability to handle my close-ups, my mediums, my medium wides, all on one lens, keeping my visual language very similar, is important to me. So, that's why I chose them. One unique find with them on this project. On Luther, we really lived in that Sumire bokeh area of like 2 1/3 to wide open. And on this project, I was more at a 4, 5, 6, which is like incredible that you essentially have 2 different lenses in one lens. But the contrast capabilities of that glass between, 4 all the way down was very pleasing. It was nice to see that, I didn't have to suffer, because at some point you would be suffering stylistic input that you don't really want to suggest, you don't want in the imagery, you just want it to be accurate. So, as the process went on, I just felt confirmed in my choice, and we continued with it.
And it's something we talked about before, especially your vision of this project was to be as accurate and dimensional. Or, I don't want to answer for you.
No, go ahead.
But
sure.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So on tell us a little bit.
No, I'll pick it up. So basically, we did a study. Dawn and I are working on another project that focuses on Winnie Mandela, and we did a lens test. We tested over about maybe 13 lenses on that project, and my area of focus with those lenses was how do these different lens options present the human form, not in terms of perspective like 24, 35, or 50, but how does a 50 from each manufacturer present the human form, as I wanted the most accurate representation of the human form that I could get. And I found that for the style of work that we do, where we're working roughly between 5 and 6 feet from subject, the Canon Sumire 50 was just like the most accurate. It didn't, some people, you say you get that cook look, a little warmth, and then there's like this 3-dimensional quality to it. I can't say that the Sumire possesses, obviously it displays depth accurately, but it doesn't impose itself to make the center of the frame feel like this exaggeration of depth doesn't exist with that lens. It feels more accurate to my eye, which allowed for us to make decisions in terms of where that image would live in terms of depth and how it would feel when you look at it. So if I'm looking at a screen and I'm using a 3-dimensional, more of a characterized 3-dimensional lens, I'm understanding that I can feel like I'm seeing around the room, and that's something that I wanted to avoid because I felt like the story was so heavy that I wanted it to almost feel flat. So you're just like you're just stuck with looking exactly at the person and not really feeling like you can ruminate. Like, no, you're just gonna stick right here with what they're saying to you, and that's gonna impose on you that way. So I'm excited to see it at the premiere on a big screen and just see how the audience feels with that philosophy, played out.
It's not something that people talk about very often, the dimensionality. Like you said, there's a difference between perspective and focal length and distance to the subject, and the lens's rendering of 3-dimension. So the fact that you did a study and you test that, I respect that greatly. It's a difficult thing to explain and to show. So I appreciate your choices on that. You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
I'm afraid of this guy, just so you know. Just so you understand why I'm sitting here today. I'm challenging myself to be better.
No, I'm not going to mess with you. Alex, what were you using and why?
From the beginning, Abby and I kind of developed a language of wanting to create a feeling of kind of a thriller, fast-paced, kind of a low-hum mood throughout the film. There's a lot of conversations between legislature, politicians, scientists, and a lot of it happens behind closed doors. And so we decided to stick with like the trusty workhorse that's been in my kit for a very long time, the 70-200, and kind of leaned into shooting everything fairly tight when we were in conversations. That kind of, I think, added to the intensity and drama of the room, of what was going on, and also a lot of the rooms aren't very interesting looking. So you're in a white room, and the room itself is not necessarily part of the scene. What we're focusing on is just what people are saying. So we stayed tight when we were in state legislature buildings, in Westminster U, down in Salt Lake, and then when we were out on the lake, we opened up and we shot with some Leica R primes, and that kind of added into we added a little bit of ProMist as well to the 70-200, just to kind of dig deeper into the matching aesthetic between the Leicas and the Canon lenses, and also help with these rooms that didn't have a ton of character if there are some windows in the background. But yeah, I think that the Canons were a great contrast between when we were outside and a little bit wider in the world. So we kind of had these two different spaces, something closer and tighter, and then also a bit wider.
What ProMist were you using, the white or the black, or what strengths?
Usually just like an 1/8 black, yeah. And you can see it in the film. There's a lot of these spaces have windows, and it just adds nice kind of flaring around people's heads and kind of draws you into what they're saying a little bit more, we thought.
And how do you feel about kind of verite and documentary shooting with a servo focus lens?
I go full manual on everything. Yeah, it's kind of not, I don't use any kind of servo zoom or anything or autofocus. So this lens has been part of my kit. I own a C500 Mark II. It's been part of my kit for like 15 years. And yeah, I think it's just like a sturdy workhorse lens, and the servo stuff is I don't take advantage of it. Maybe I should.
Gabby, Jack, what were you guys using and why?
So similar to Alex, we made a short film before we made the feature, also called Nuisance Bear, and we had no funding at that point. So we used our own gear, and we have a 70-200 that is just a sturdy workhorse. It's a beautiful lens too, and so we were using that. But even though it's a long lens for wildlife, it was like a wide angle. So that really helped us thematically because we were always trying to include the human activity, and so we by shooting kind of wide with the bears, that helped us develop the language of, thematically what we were trying to talk about. But before we shot that, Jack and I got really into BBC's The Hunt, which it was the first time where we saw, the DPs mounting these 6-axis gimbals that were traditionally for helicopters, but they started mounting them onto vehicles, and at one point on an elephant, because the elephants could get closer to the tigers or something. And it was so beautiful, and it was so cinematic, and it just felt like you were with the animals, so we knew that was something we always wanted to do. So when it came time, and we actually had funding to do the feature, we reached out to a Vancouver-based wildlife production company that had a shot over and a Cineflex, and they had a 50 to 1000 Canon lens, which is incredible, and allowed us to have both that kind of wide angle, but then also get close to the bears so that we could have close-ups, so that he's our main character, so we want to be with him. It also has a doubler, so we could go to 1500, which is incredible. And so that was like such an important tool for us, and was the first thing that we were like, okay, this is what we need, and we'll figure everything else out around that.
Yeah, and then we also use the Canon 30 to 300 because the 50 to 1000 is such an enormous piece of glass. You can imagine it's quite a slow lens, around 5, 6, 8, depending on where you are. And when you go into the doubler at 1500, it becomes like I think an 11. And so, as the daylight decreases over time in the fall when we're shooting, it gets harder and harder to capture images, especially at dusk. And so we needed a 30 to 300 to be able to shoot, into the night.
Yeah, it is slow, obviously, for the range that it has, but it's an amazing feat of optical engineering. I've been astounded by what Canon was able to do with that 50 to 1000.
It's one of a kind. I don't think there's any other lens like it. And the rendition, it holds up against the best prime lenses,
I don't know if this is true, but I heard something about, wildlife photographers were asking for this range, and Ingenue was like, it's impossible. And then Canon pulled through, so.
I can't confirm or deny that, but I can absolutely say that any optical engineer would look at that as a near impossible feat to try to make that as it is a large lens, but in the compact size that it is for that range.
And it's worth noting, it's a beautiful lens. It's not just technically, okay, you get to that length. It actually, it bokehs beautifully. Something that maybe not everybody wants, but that I like, is when you get heat haze off of the ground, because it's so long, you get this kind of nice painterly quality of the things you're looking at. And so yeah, it is an incredible engineering feat.
You don't really immediately equate polar bears with heat haze. At least I don't.
More and more you do.
Well, but also they do exist in summertime and fall time. At least this subpopulation, because they're lower. They're not quite up by the North Pole. So there's lots of beautiful imagery of them in these beautiful purple flowers, and so yeah, they exist in all kinds of.
Yeah, they're complex animals. I think we, as Southerners, had a picture of them that when we were confronted by when we went up there. I mean, half the year they spend on land. More, I think, every year, but they're adapting. I don't know if it's fast enough, but they're certainly
they're really cunning.
Yeah.
Cunning? Yeah, it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So let's talk a little bit about, and thank you, by the way, for all of you for saying bouquet correctly. I appreciate that so much. But let's talk about the importance of those aspects to you in the lenses that you choose. How much of the character plays a role? There was a question in there, I'm sure. I kind of fumbled to find it, but I'm looking at you first. But you're okay. Great, Brian, take it.
No, I think as I progress and mature as a documentarian cinematographer, I'm pulling away from style just because it's available, and I'm trying to be more honest, and I'm trying to be thoughtful about, I don't know, it's like I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with a lot of elderly people in these last projects, and there's a difference when you see someone sit down and they're just really afraid of the camera. We're not working with seasoned actors. These are real people. And this is probably the first, for some of them, it's the first time they've ever sat in front of a camera with someone that has a heart. Like I have a heart to try to paint you in a way that I'll see the likeness of you. I'll see who you are, and I'm trying to show that to you. I'm not trying to beautify you just because this light looks good, or use tools just because they have a buzzword today. So I'm more so just, I was in the vintage space, and now I'm just looking for modern optics that are going to present people accurately, so that when they're sitting there watching that difficult moment where they had to share that moment of their lives, they feel like they can see themselves and not be compressed or be exaggerated, distorted in any way. So, I appreciate that the Sumerays have that ability to give me like some painterly opportunity to flatter outside of just a natural rendition, but I mean like the bokeh, to just kind of take it to a new place. But I think I'm gravitating more towards that deeper stop just because of the accuracy in the presentation.
I love that you bring that up. I think that there's a lot of trends that people kind of just follow because it's the trend. We're all kind of going for the K35 look, right? Canon K35s, everybody. That became incredibly popular. But I have evangelized on a constant basis that there is no wrong lens, and they are all fantastic, and they all have a place. I think your choice of the Sumerays and using them at a deeper stop is interesting because they're sort of designed to be used wide open to give you a softer, more elegant bouquet. And you're choosing directly to kind of go a little bit away from that with these. So you're using the tool exactly what it was designed for, to give you those two different looks out of it. And I think Canon should be very happy. Talk to this guy. Also, while I got you here, I want to talk about the shooting documentary with primes and the choice of that and why.
Thank you for that question. It's actually become very clear to me that when I'm using primes, I'm able to just be an observer. And I don't, as I said to you before, like I don't want to be suggestive. I don't want to be holding a two-shot and then zoom in on someone's face and then zoom in for the hands because I feel like there's tension. I don't want to tell you as a viewer anything. I want you to make up your own mind about what you see. And there's also this beauty in the dance of a relationship that's built, as cinematographers. When you start a project with somebody, you respect their personal boundaries and you do all the things as a professional. But as that relationship progresses, I gain this relationship to a point where my talent is now coming closer to me. And that's really where I want to be. I want to be as close to you as possible on that 35 millimeter lens. I want to feel the curvature of your body in that lens, and I want the audience to feel that. So I'm just taking on more of that responsibility of thinking, hey, don't be overly active. You have to think when you're first starting out with someone, they're self-critical because they're just like, how do I look on camera? Is everything okay? And so if you're right in their face, that's all you get is their chance to provide you with their representative. But if you fall back and you let them come to you, now they're their natural self, and that's what I'm there to capture. I don't want to assist you in misrepresenting yourself, and I also don't want to misrepresent you.
Alex, you're kind of the counterpoint to that because with the lake, you're at more of a distance. You're sort of being a voyeur and being involved in situations where people are having conversations that they might not want you to be privy to, right?
Yeah, I think long lenses can also achieve a similar intimacy that a prime can, in a different way. I think hanging back sometimes gives people the space that they can be their true full selves and feel comfortable. Some of these scenes that we were shooting in rooms, I was outside the door. It's like they're having that conversation in there. There's no camera in their face, because if we were in there with a camera, then that could seriously affect how they feel and what they, the kind of conversations that they have. I mean, that's not, my general approach is I like to start from a distance and then work my way in as I develop a relationship with someone. So in a lot of my films, whether it's a long lens or a prime, sounds similar to you, but I kind of I let the feeling of either they're going to come to me or I've been spending enough time with them and I can slowly move in closer as they are more comfortable with the camera. And yeah, I think sometimes not being in the room is more intimate than actually being next to someone. And of course, it changes with each person you're spending time with. And that's not to say that I don't get up in people's faces. I mean, like, if I'm in, yeah. But
When the moment is right.
yes, unfortunately for them, but yes.
Sorry.
I think, you saying, being outside the room, like, I totally agree with that. And I think it's incredible to hear you say that because it's like we're using two different focal lengths to achieve a similar result.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you're not fishing with that zoom,
Right.
You're not changing perspective or suggesting. You're just allowing for there to be this sense of privacy and space.
Yeah.
But by using that long lens, so
Yeah.
I actually thank you for that because I'm like, I do like to shoot through the window. I do it like on a 35, so there, I'm also looking to get as much context of the space. But like you've already said, sometimes it's a boring white room and you don't want to show a sea of white walls, right?
Right.
But yeah, that was cool. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
And for you two, it's a little difficult to get a short prime into a polar bear's face.
We did manage for one scene though, but the bear was incapacitated, so he was being.
That's not fair.
I know he was being relocated because he was a nuisance bear and got into the garbage a few too many times. So I took that opportunity with a 29mm to get really close to his face so that we could be with him and feel like we're being abducted by aliens. Because I imagine that's what it probably felt like for him. So that's that shot there. He's a really beautiful bear. But no Canon products for that.
Yeah, don't look at
Don't look too
don't look at the
closely.
lenses. Next image, please.
I thought that was another polar bear above him.
Yeah, hide it,
wearing a
Jay.
Canon
Hide it.
hat.
Yeah, that's good. Next slide.
Avert your eyes. But yeah, long lenses were a must for us for that. Of course, we had to balance verite scenes with our human characters, as we call them. So that was a different approach, and trying to balance between the two was probably one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like a similar approach, like using zooms for humans as well, mostly because we were directing in the two different communities. So I was in Churchill, Jack was in Arviat, and in Churchill, you're following these people that are almost more difficult than following the animals because it's bear season and they're like, this is when they make their money for the year, and so I have to just be like able to go because they're not going to wait for me and they're not going to redo things. So just having a smaller camera, a long lens, zoom was a must. But I think for you got to have a bit more use of primes in.
Yeah, well, I just want to
Arviat.
talk about the 50 to 1000 a bit more too, because it's the gold standard for wildlife. So, we were just so lucky to be able to use that lens for as long as we did, and I think respect is a major theme in our film. Respect for the bears, respect for nature, and so, having a lens like this, I mean, it's just gave us the maximum amount of distance, the maximum amount of space that we could give to the bears, so that we weren't at least we were contributing as little as possible to their habituation. I mean, we're part of that circus too, and so the film is, I think, in some ways a critique of being an observer, and that everything has a footprint, right? These little ripples can create this big storm, and you have to be very deliberate with the lens because it takes an hour to take the whole thing apart and then change lenses, and you have to rebalance the whole gimbal, and there's a specially printed cage for every individual lens. So it's really, really sophisticated, and I do not know very much about it. We brought the technician who sort of runs this gimbal in the shop in Vancouver, and he was His name is Jack Gothrop, and he was just an invaluable resource.
Yeah, he's a genius.
And also the film, I feel, is in a way an unfiltered look at these animals. It's more raw, it's more gritty, and so we were just so pleased with the rendition of the 51,000. It doesn't really distort things. It's really, the colors are amazing, and of course the environment that you're filming has so much to do with what the image. What the final image is, and so I think just the angle of the light and the Arctic is just incredible. So we were just so lucky to have that as a subject.
It's interesting to me because I never even imagined that there was a tourist culture around bears or a season around bears. So that's something that your film is sort of teaching me about. And I imagine that is playing a huge role in painting the bears as nuisance when really they're just in their environment.
Yeah. When we first went up, we were fresh out of film school, and so we were thinking a lot about what it means to photograph something and what is our active participation in that. Because documentary can be very emotionally draining because you are sort of contending with your placement in it, and so it is really nice to hear how everyone's talking about just thinking sensitively about how we work with our subjects. And so that was really the striking, I don't think I'm answering your question, but that was really the striking thing for us and kept us going, is just that ongoing conversation of what it means to do this kind of work.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of almost an impossible situation. We really wanted to take a neutral position in the story because there are so many different viewpoints about these bears, and they all have their reasonings for feeling a particular way about them, and we wanted to include all of those as, on the same level.
But at the same time, Churchill has its narrative that it's had for a while, so they started bear tourism because before that they were just shooting bears that were hanging out at the dump, just getting rid of them. It was an army base before it was a community the way it was, so the army base was just shooting them. And then they were like, well, it's the most accessible area to see bears. It's not, there's a community there, there's a train you can take, there's an airport. So community members were like, well, how do we help them? If we have people to pay to see them, then we're protecting them, we're not shooting them. And in theory, that's wonderful, right? Like for a time that worked really well. But to other communities nearby who have lived there forever, like the Inuit community that we film with as well, they see this as deeply disrespectful. And the conservation management that occurs is very similar to what was done to the indigenous communities, where they were controlled, they were forcibly settled, they were pushed to different areas. And so we wanted to make that parallel, that there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to do conservation, but we really have to think about how we do it.
And we need to consult with the locals about it. And so often they've been left out of that conversation.
Yeah.
They're being more told what the situation is than listened to, right?
Yeah, and when they speak up, they're told that they're wrong. And they've lived there for thousands of years with these animals, so it's flabbergasting.
I think there's a sort of an interesting theme coming up, that not only trauma, dealing with stories as a documentarian, being empathetic with your subject, but also putting yourself into situations that are not safe. Alex, you're in a toxic environment shooting. How are you protecting yourself? How are you handling that? And how are you protecting the gear?
Good question. I am, there's one day, it didn't make it into the film, but we rented these electric cargo bikes and went out about 2 miles on a dry lake bed into the middle of the lake to film a scene with a dust monitor where they're collecting all this toxic dust. I think I wore a mask. Some of the pictures, I don't have a mask on, so I'm trying to remember. But I mean, it's a good question, and I don't think it's talked about enough. And there's been some writing about it done by other cinematographers about keeping ourselves safe and dealing with trauma. And there should be more mental health work and whatnot with our work. But I think for us, it was wearing masks, wearing N95 masks when we're shooting out at the lake, and monitoring the air quality. There's a lot of people who live out here have air quality alerts that go off if the air's not good enough. And then with gear, I think, with the Canon equipment that we used, it's held up really well, and I would just wipe it down, afterwards, and with like Pancro and just clean it off and make sure there was no residue or salt left on it, and it held up. Some of the other camera equipment that we used that wasn't Canon, not as much, but I'm not going to talk about that here.
Oh no, please. Yeah, the weather protection on that 70 to 200 is fantastic. It's one of the better functions of that. Well, it's a great lens all around.
Yeah, I've taken it out here on dust. I've been on boats with it. I've been, it's gotten rained on. It's still going. So
it's a good old tank and a workhorse. But yeah, the trauma that you feel, having empathy for your subject, dealing with somebody who's been in prison for, was it 30 years?
36.
36 years, wrongly imprisoned. It's difficult to not take that home with you. How do you deal with that? I really moved beyond lenses here, but let's get deep.
I don't think there was room for me. I saw them last night for the first time since the last shoot, and watching how they've developed since that shoot truly brought me to tears. Like, I don't think I've ever dealt with it. There was this sense that their story deserved to be told, and that was the point. So thank you for asking me, Jay. In front of all these people and the YouTube world. But no, I didn't think about it, man. I think they really deserved it. The emotional intelligence that they have, the heart and character that they have, losing their freedom for 36 years, and then they come out and they're still just incredible people, more incredible than some people that have their freedom every day and never challenged, in my experience.
Sorry to hijack
my
the panel.
director.
Directors are such assholes. But the reason I wanted to say this is because one of our subjects, there's a very emotional last scene where they confront the person who convicted them wrongfully. And it was very emotional. The guys really broke down. And one of the guys, he's sobbing. And the first thing he did, he went to Brian. And he said, that man, I trust him. And he was the person who comforted him. And he said, all during this time, every time I looked at Brian during the hardest interviews, I knew he felt me. And so the first person he went to for solace after being brutally treated was our camera guy. And he talks about that's the reason why he could open up during the film, because of him.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And on that note, can we get into any deeper therapy? How's your relationship with your parents? And
No, I think the therapy was last night when I saw them going from starting off with long lenses because I wanted to give them their space and privacy and build trust, and then being able to go to the way I'm more comfortable shooting to primes, to them coming to me, watching them release these shackles of boundary and to begin to feel like they were safe. When we first did that first interview with them, their eyes would watch everybody in the room, and there was only 6 of us. We were very sensitive to the fact that we knew that we were going to have to earn every bit of trust. And then I'm at a HBO party last night, and they walk up to me in a room full of people.
thank you, Brian.
The healing. They're healing. Damn you, Jay. But thank you for making me say it.
I think it's an incredibly important discussion to have, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, my friend. But I appreciate your candor. I think it's not talked about enough. What obviously the subjects went through something horrific and horrible, but as filmmakers, we have to be empathetic to our subjects, and we carry that, and we don't talk about it very often. So I appreciate your emotion. I respect it, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
There definitely needs to be more therapy for people who work in the doc space. That's something I've talked to a lot with friends who also work it in. There's like a few therapists out there who come from a filmmaking background, but I don't think there's enough.
I mean, we get to live in a lot of different worlds, and like I'm more of an introvert at home, and I get to go out and be a completely different person. And I mean, for me, I'm sure that's why we all do this, is to get, it's devastatingly difficult sometimes, but to get to that emotional relationship with someone that you might not have ever met before is, incredibly special. So
This is the first time this ever happened to me. I'm usually obsessed with style, and like I just was so like involved in my own wants, but this project just changed all of it. It's the first time that the responsibility was more important than my style. And as an artist, I'm so grateful for the experience. But I'm grateful, but I just feel like because I saw them last night, this is so raw. But that's what we train for. That's why we dedicate our lives to the art, to be able to be in a place to share that story truthfully, accurately, with our viewer.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the rawness and your willingness to get into that. On that note, does anybody out there have a question? How the hell do I segue out of this? Yes, please.
I'm curious, as a documentary filmmaker myself, but starting off, I come from narrative, how you build that trust with your subjects, because I feel like it's very different than with actors, like getting up close to them, it's something that they expect, but people who maybe are not used to having a camera in their face. If there are some things you've learned along the way to earn that trust.
So the question is, how do you earn the trust with your subjects? How do you gain that level of trust so that they, please don't.
I've written about this a little bit, but I pride myself on not overshooting, and I spend a lot of time without the camera, just to build a relationship. I think it's a myth that we're like objective without, should just be operators and not have relationships with the people that are giving and dedicating so much of their time to these films, these projects. And so for me, it's like building a relationship with someone as I would anyone else. Active listening, empathy, and then taking it slow. I don't know, not rushing into anything, not rushing into their face with the camera, but just, and sharing also, like I share about my own life with people. It's a two-way thing. I wouldn't expect someone to give their emotions and deepest feelings to me if I'm not going to give anything myself. So it's a clear example of it goes both ways, right? They respected you and they trusted you, and yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, which is why I think all of us, we like to start wide, because it gives you an opportunity, if you care, to pay attention to nuance and body language. You start to see the representative shed and find out who that person is. And as you do that, as you put your heart in that place, you'll know when to move and when not to. You'll know how to make decisions that are humane. and that's how you get close. And you'll find maybe sometimes you put the camera down, and now they're coming up to talk to you. You pay attention. You care about that relationship, and then you'll do what you need to do to develop it.
Yeah, we did a lot of trips up north where we didn't shoot at all. And we, ate fermented walrus with people. We just spent time and we really listened because, especially with Arviat, because we knew that they had just not been listened to for so long. And so we just listened, and then we shaped our narrative a lot around the things we heard.
Yeah, I think just time is one of the most important ingredients. Having that time, and often I feel the budgets can be restrictive because you just got to get in and get out. And it was so important for us to self-finance for 5 years, trips up there so that we could just sit and listen with people and not come in with our own preconceived idea of what you always come in with an idea of something, but it's really important that your idea is challenged by the subject and you accept that challenge, and the result is so much more rewarding than your own idea of it. We were filming in the Arctic with polar bears, which is obviously not the easiest environment, but the most difficult challenge, I think, was the access and building trust in the communities. In Churchill, it's much easier because there's an infrastructure for tourism, so people are either welcoming, you're expected to be there, you're spending your money there. But in Arviat, there's real resistance to outsiders because Inuit have been vilified for their traditional hunting by Greenpeace and other activist organizations. And so it took 7 years of going to Arviat to get to the place where we were welcomed in a way that we were able to tell the story in this way. And so, it's just there's these levels of access. In our particular case, there was a community access level, and so we went up and we screened the short. We had about 200 people come, and we were really apprehensive about the response because, again, we're outsiders, and the community in Arviat had experienced a death from a polar bear very recently, and so it really traumatized the entire town. And so not only did we feel like we needed to seek permission from the community, but the family who lost their son, we wanted to reach out to them, just to let them know that we were trying to make this film and that we were listening. And through that experience, we received the greatest gift that we could have ever received for this particular project, which was that the father of the man who died agreed to narrate the film. And because he was so open with us, it took us to a place we never could have imagined. And
something he talked about was that he never had the opportunity to talk about it, and so in us coming together, he was able to process what had happened. So we're just so lucky that we got to know Mike. He passed away right after filming. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as a cinematographer, I don't know how you all feel, but it's like you have to be so sensitive, but at the same time have a really thick skin. And
yeah, because
really
you make yourself vulnerable with your sensitivity, and then you have to be strong for the subjects. So it's a lot. You come home and you're like, dang.
And so I think it's really important that you choose your subjects carefully because you're invested. It's a lifelong relationship. It's a lifelong commitment. It isn't just you walk away and it's over. At least for us. And so we were really deliberate not to sort of go on a wild chase on every subject because we really wanted to.
Who knew this lens talk would lead to
I'm like,
I can't stop crying.
I'm pretty close to tears myself.
I'm so honored to be on stage with artists with such incredible integrity.
Us too.
I'm grateful. That's how you end somewhere like this, and to think it's all because we're using Canon products.
That's the secret.
70 to 200.
So beautiful, make you cry.
I got nothing to follow that with. Any other questions? Yes, please.
So I know you've worked with Don on a few different projects, but like if you're working with a different director, how do you determine, like, is it just your style that you're going to use, or do you try to create something different for that film, and how do you go about that? That's tests or like...
No, thank you for the question. I mean, we're in a space now where budgets are reduced to a point where the onus is on you to understand lensing. You know, you kind of have to do your own research. But I find myself, as I progress, becoming more of a serviceman in terms of, like, I really want to know what the visionary wants to achieve. And then, so that's any director. There's a soft spot for Dawn, so I have a tremendous amount of respect for her. And also, she's a true collaborator. Some people are not like that. But I'm still, as a serviceman, going to ask, what do you want to achieve? And I'm going to remove myself from that and use all of my skill set and talent and just anything at my disposal to try to continue to present you with what you said you wanted. I like that. I find I like that approach more and more in documentary because I'm fielding requests that are far beyond things that I would naturally tasks that I would naturally take on my own. You know, when we start to echo within our own walls, we gravitate towards things that we like and things that and you're not really being challenged in that way. But when you're servicing requests and you're really trying to execute, I have an amazing tool belt now because I've been doing that now for several years versus what I had before, and I was just continuing to provide the same thing that I wanted to do.
I'm similar. I get a lot of pleasure and joy out of being in service to someone. I had a visual arts background, so I do art on my own time for myself. And so working with directors, because we don't just shoot our own things, I work with other directors. And it's like a special kind of pleasure to interpret what they want and then give them more than what they ask for. And so that's always what I'm trying to achieve, and then it feels good.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Back to the heavy stuff, if that's okay, but do you feel like when you're working on a really emotional film where there's lots of intense emotion going around that you kind of turn things off for a little while, for a little bit in some ways, until the film is over so you can let like the emotions be raw, coming without your own input, and then you feel your own emotions after? Because that's something I relate to a lot, is kind of blocking things out and waiting.
I mean, I think we are all technicians also, and so we have to make sure the camera's rolling, and, you know, sometimes we have more crew and they can help us, sometimes we're on our own, and like I also ran sound, and there's a level of precision that you have to have for that, which helps, like, you know, I'm always listening, but I'm also making sure that we're capturing what we need in a technical sense. I would say as soon as I'm in the car is when, like, you know, you start processing. It's not usually after the project, but
yeah, it's like the equipment aspect gives you purpose to like achieve the goal, and then you can process later.
But I think it is important to be processing, you know, while you're shooting as well. I mean, like, when you're active, right? When you're dealing with the equipment and framing things, there's not a lot of time to emotionally process, I guess. But then, you know, on the car ride home or when you can't fall asleep at night, I mean, I think things come to you, you know, through those emotions, and I think those then, you know, they aid us as you know, receivers.
I think you should process, or you'll end up on a lens panel and be asked a question and fall apart. So you should probably process throughout, you know, yeah.
And I mean, I also feel like some of my best work is when I am shooting through my emotions. Like my camera movements are dictated by the way that I am feeling in the moment. And that might not be processing, but it's just my like immediate emotional reaction to what's going on. So there's probably like multiple levels of processing that happens, and then now we're here.
Yeah, it's a dance, and I think emotion comes is a big part of that dance.
And I realized in this discussion that deviated way from lenses, that we also looked past some of the BTS that you had. So as I wrap this out, I'd like to, Joey, if you could just kind of scroll through some of the BTS that Gabby and Jack has. I want to say thank you. Thank you to all four of you for being here, for your candor, for your motion, for your integrity, and having this discussion. This was pretty incredible. Thank you to everybody who joined us for this lively comedic performance up here. On behalf of American Cinematographer and Canon, thank you to all of you, and enjoy your last Sundance in Park City.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.